Dr. Boz. It is Sunday night, and I'm super excited. I have a great show for you tonight. One that I've been saving up for, might be 4 months now, where I've said, hey, I'm going to do this show on vitamin D. And we are finally to the vitamin D night. So for those of you that have been waiting, I'm going to say thank you very much for being so patient. And as usual, I would love a little feedback on if you can hear me and you can see me, because I'm flying solo tonight. Jack, my helper, is not with me. And that always means that there's just a little bit of drama right before I go live. So I feel pretty proud to be going live at like 2 minutes after the top of the hour. All right, so I will give a couple of announcements as I set up my testing for the night. I am going to check my ketones, and I am going to tell you a couple things that I am doing to help ensure my fast this week. I've been a little less than perfect over the last 3 weeks as I look at some of the challenges that I've struggled with. Those challenges start with traveling, and then just some other deadlines that just took me a little further away from my goal that I wanted. I wish I was a little more perfect, but I am totally human, people. As I have people write in and they talk about their struggles, I'm like, boy, I can relate to that very, very well. All right, so I'm just pricking my finger and checking my numbers. But as I prepare to get back in the zone of, as many of you have been following on American Tradition, that's our documentary where we're walking people through the steps that I teach in the online course Consistently Keto, as well as in my book, the Keto Continuum. So those ketones show you exactly where I'm at. A ketone of 0.3 and glucose of 90, and that's what it feels like. That is totally what it feels like. We'll check that at the end of the show. I am going to have a little BHB. But as I walked through that process with Michelle those first few weeks, and we are about to unveil episode number 5, she did progress to some of the more challenging stages, and I was so happy to do it with her. And then the last few weeks, I think it's been like 4 out of the last 5 weekends, I have not been home. And that just, it's awful. I'm not good at it. All right, I'm going to have my favorite, which is ketones. I'm going to do the raspberry ones. And as many of you have asked, what's the difference between using ketones when you fast versus, so I'm going to have about probably not that much, about a half a scoop. I don't need a full scoop. I'm not going to have it. So about a half a scoop. When do I choose to have ketones and when do I choose to have the MCT or the combo? And when I fast, I tend only to have my just straight ketones, and I try not to have any, but I have been stumbling. I have been struggling, and I know in part it's because the rhythm is messy and these deadlines have kept me up, and they're exciting to get them checked off, but they totally screw up my fast. So I am completely human. And as I look at the next 3 days, I'm going to reach for a 72-hour fast. And I think I can do that. I mean, I really honestly feel like the last 3 or 4 72-hour fasts that I did, I was pretty solid. It wasn't hard. That first 36 hours is the most challenging, and from 36 to about 50 hours are the hardest. And I know that if I don't preset where I'm going to put my energy when I struggle, if I don't do that before I begin, it does not go well. Does not go well. So as I prepare for this 72-hour fast, I write down in my journal, and I have a women's Bible study that I do each week, and we write down people's prayers, and we do a Bible study trying to improve our journey. And in that journal, I put down what I pray for when I fast, and it is remarkable. If I can identify where I'm going to put my mind when I struggle, And I, I'm a woman of faith. I partner with the Lord to say, I'm going to focus on this when I struggle. And if I can do that at the beginning of my fast, oh, it's amazing how much better this goes. So I am working on that, and I will, if you follow me on Instagram, that would be, you'll see how that turns out, because I usually post. There's only been a few times where I've done well and I just didn't have the, I didn't have the meter with me, or I checked it and then I was in a rush and just didn't post it. And it kind of seems weird to post it like a day after the fast has ended. So sometimes I didn't post it, but for the most part, I will show you what my numbers are throughout the post or throughout the fast. And I try to show you how far I make it. So anyway, if you're looking for a partnership to fast, I'm really trying to get back in the rhythm. Our hero in the American tradition, which is my sister-in-law, she started bravely at my mother's funeral saying, yes, I will be the focus of this documentary and walk through the American, we didn't have the word American tradition at the time, but we've really learned a lot about just her family, and I think many people's family, but when you put a camera in front of people, it sure does change how they are able to just look inside their journey, kind of reflect, maybe because you could actually see it on film. But it's been really great for her. But her whole family got COVID this past week, and so she wasn't able to fast this past week. And if you've been watching American Tradition, just give her a prayer and send out a shout. I do think that her journey to follow, if you don't follow her on Instagram, Michelle Bosworth on Instagram, she's way more exciting than me. She's living on a farm, and for the first time, and I call her my, was it Zsa Zsa Gabor that was on the Green Acres? That was the star of Green Acres. It was one of the Gabor sisters. And there have been some really funny moments that are totally funny for me, growing up on a farm, having my sister-in-law now live there, and she's doing great. But there are some really funny moments. So yeah, if you want some entertainment, if you want to encourage her, I would follow her on Instagram, and maybe I'll post that on Instagram on one of my screenshots, what her exact address is, because I don't know it off the top of my head. So a couple things about tonight. We are going to talk about vitamin D. I am going to give away a couple of books as well online, those audio books like I've done in the past. And I am also going to warn you that Jack's not here. So I have a different way that I'm going to try and present these slides, but I think it's going to work. One of the other updates that I keep sharing with people is that I have really been trying to put at the top of my list over the past 2 weeks, past probably 3 months, but is the edits for the workbook. And I really do want the workbook to be super evergreen, like to be useful for people, not just one time through the Consistently Keto course, because that's not what anybody does. It's a journey, and you fall and you do what I've done in the past week, which I have been great, and then I wasn't, and I was in a stride for almost 18 months, and then my mom died, and it took me till January. In fact, this story tonight's going to tell you a little bit about that struggle of what happened, and what when you're the physician, you're saying, okay, what would I tell my patient to do? I hate to admit that I had some moments where I'm like, I don't want to do that, but I did it. And I'll share that with you in just a minute. But the struggle of being consistently keto, it's not a one-day thing. It is this journey. It is it is like preparing for a I've never run a marathon, but so the longest I've ever done, I think, is 10K, or maybe it was a half marathon. I think it was a half marathon. It was a long ways, and but it is that journey. I kind of think of it as like studying medicine. Like, you're never going to be great in one day. The best physicians on the other side of all that studying are the ones who are humble enough to say, I got a lot of it figured out, but I don't have everything figured out, and I'm going to stumble, and I'm going to have tough days, and there's going to be some I don't knows. And what do you do then? And it's that journey that I really think changing the course of where medicine is going is about finding a way to help people on this journey. I've had several of you write in saying, what are you going to do when you get to Tampa? And I have still have prayers out there telling you it's not official that we're moving to Tampa yet because my son is still not in this high school. And he is going to be a sophomore. And if he doesn't have a high school to go to, we're not moving. So please pray that he gets into the high school. They don't announce that till mid-May. So hopefully you can find out somewhere in that journey with me, and just pray for him because it's a lot of pressure on the little guy who is a great kid, but that's quite a lot on him. So, but if I'm, no matter what happens, the world of where medicine has been and where I want to go isn't traditional, and it doesn't usually that, when people say I'm going to try something that's not traditional in medicine, I don't know. I can never stop seeing patients. It's too much part of my core. But I really do find that when you look at physician burnout, it comes with the baggage of medicine, not the heart of medicine. And I'm excited about the next chapter. And so stay tuned. You'll hear more about that in the next year. So the workbook is where I was going with this. So the workbook has been very high on my to-do list. We are probably down to the last 10% that I need to finalize, and I've got some editors that are going to help me look over it in the next couple of weeks, and I think we're really close. But it took a complete revamp of where I thought I was gonna do with that workbook, and then still honoring all the things in the book where I say you should look at the workbook. You should look at the workbook. But it is it's going to be good. I really like how it's turning out, and I think it is meant for the journey. It's meant for the long game, and that's the difference between just whimsically doing keto and really being consistent about it. So as I get ready for the lesson for tonight, I am going to just have a little bit of forgiveness if this takes me a second to get it to look right, and then know that there's probably about 50 ways you could crack the code of not having everything perfect tonight, but I think it's going to work. Hold on. All right, so we are going to talk tonight about vitamin D, and vitamin D has been on this list that I've been working on, but also has been part of how important is this? And I know vitamin D became a really big central theme in the world of COVID. But what I want to talk about isn't just that what does vitamin D do to your chances of getting COVID? Chances of getting COVID are exposure. Whether that turns into a flood inside your lungs has a lot to do with the health of your body before that virus comes in. But vitamin D has a history. It has a history of being this sneaky little fella. And I would contend that it was probably the most underappreciated mineral and vitamin that I learned in medical school, meaning I did not learn nearly enough about it in medical school. It was one of the things on a test. It was one of those fat-soluble vitamins. And in this process of really honing my skills for keto, I've come to appreciate the grand nature of what vitamin D really offers. And I'm going to show you about that tonight. So let me see if I can make this look as good as it did in my my plan here. All right. So now I wonder if it looks backwards to you. Dang, if it looks backwards, that's not going to be good. So can somebody tell me if those words look like they're written correctly or if they're backwards? It's good. Okay. All right. Not backwards. Thanks be to God. Okay. So this is my workaround for the dongle that usually connects my computer to you is missing. And this was how I fixed that problem. And I felt like MacGyver in 16 minutes or less. How can we do this a different way? All right, so it's a little bit crooked on the screen, but you can see me and you can see the slides, which is what I was hoping for. All right, so for those of you that have played this game before, this is how I want you to stick around to the end because I am going to give away the audio books. And again, there are two books that I've written. The first one, I wonder if I ever can capture such a great story again. It was about my mother. That picture on the front cover is that little boy who's going to be a sophomore, who's trying to get into this school. That's the little boy kissing my mother, who's at this stage of the story, 71 years old, and 70 pounds overweight, 65 to 70 pounds overweight, had 2 rounds of chemo, was being faced with her 3rd round of chemo, and her brain was not doing it. She was saying, nope, not going to do this. I am not interested. So that audiobook is the story of how I kind of stumbled in with a high degree of skepticism about the ketogenic diet, and knowing that it was going to be a difficult go of it, not just because I had seen about every scam there was in medicine and was sure this was another one, but also because the patient was someone I loved dearly, my mother. That audiobook is if you've never heard keto, or if your doctor is pushing back and they want a great story, as well as I wrote a lot about my skepticism in there, like, this is for sure a scam diet. I am certain of it. So I love, in fact, I was rereading some of the things for it over the past month, and I had to giggle because I'm like, oh, that's exactly how irritated I was that somebody was bringing me another scam diet. And it wasn't actually that way, but you can read about it or listen about it in the book. Any way you can. I did record much. I wasn't planning on it, but that's how it worked out, that I did audio record it. I read it, and we're going to give that away at the end. So this book is best designed for skeptical doctors, but also for people who want a really good story and who have never really heard of a ketone. The book that just came out in January, the one that I think turned out lovely, but is also the one the workbook is about to go with. It's also the one that is from the online course Consistently Keto. I will guarantee that my most organized thoughts are when in writing. In the online course, actually, it turned out really well as well. But when people show up on YouTube and they'll say, don't you have a list that's more organized? I'm like, well, there's one playlist that's really organized. And I think the American tradition is going to be very organized, but organized is in the book. But the book is much more answers to the questions that I didn't touch on in the first book. Not that they weren't in my head, I just didn't know the answers. And in some parts, I just didn't know how it was going to play out. I didn't think it was going to become my whole clinic. I just thought it was going to be great for my mom and a few brain injury patients. All right, so what's going to happen here is you want to write down that address at the bottom, and I'm going to give away 2 books that are consistently keto, or the Keto Continuum, and 1 of the audiobooks for Any Way You Can at the end of this. So I hope that you enjoy this. That is not what I wanted that to say. Here we go. That's what I wanted to say. All right, so we're talking about vitamin D tonight. And vitamin D is this incredible, important hormone. Yes, it is a vitamin, I know, but is really not, it is mislabeled. It is a misnamed because there is a receptor on every nucleus in our body, the cells of our body. Every nucleus has a little receptor that says, we're waiting for the signal from vitamin D. And how your system responds, how your body responds to its environment is in part related to how well your vitamin D level is doing. So as I look at the best source of vitamin D, our sun does win, and we're going to go into that just a little bit more here. As you look at what happens really with vitamin D, the sun is a big part of it, and that's where many people get their vitamin D. There are UVB, there's UVA and UVB rays that react with cholesterol in our body. And the cholesterol is kind of an odd thing for people to hear about. We get a lot of questions that come in about cholesterol. But as it turns into a point of discussion on the ketogenic diet, what many people have mislabeled or misunderstood with cholesterol is that it is a nutrient. It is a supply of fat. And when part of that fat supply is a specific cholesterol that is from the UVB ray, and it is the 7-dehydrocholesterol that will be the star of our little vitamin D. So as the sun does its job and shines on our skin. It takes that vitamin D, or it takes that cholesterol and turns it into vitamin D3. I have lots of folks write in saying, why, what do you recommend, vitamin D or vitamin D3 or vitamin D2? I do recommend vitamin D3 as the vitamin that people take, and I've said a couple of times that I'm not a big fan of supplements and taking supplements, but looking at your vitamin D3 is a place where I don't put my name on very many vitamins. I don't think I will put them on any more than K2 D3, and it is because those two fat-soluble vitamins are incredibly undernourished in most of my patients. Again, I'm here in South Dakota. We're going to get to that part of the region in just a second. But the vitamin D3 is easier for your gut to absorb, and it does not require that your body activate it into from a D2 to the active form, which is D3. So two things, yes. It is easier for your body to absorb. And I will say that in general, vitamin D is not very easy to absorb. It's fat soluble. So if you haven't been practicing swallowing fat, if you don't have fat on your coming into your body, coming into your system in the absence of high insulin. So that means with a low carbohydrate diet, the way your body absorbs fat becomes more efficient. And many people, as they enter onto the ketogenic diet, they end up with loose stools that are filled with fat because their system, their gut, is not healthy enough to absorb it. And one of the things they're not absorbing is the vitamins that are fat soluble. Both K and D are two of the fat soluble vitamins in our body. And specifically, it's D3 and K2 that become what I think of as critical in the process of improving the ketogenic nourishment as measured by labs and as measured by health outcomes. All right, so as we look, the next place that happens, so two places your vitamin D can come in. You can get it from the sunlight. You can also get it from swallowing nutrient-dense foods. The liver takes over the next spot where it converts it into a 25 hydroxy vitamin D. So it does a little chemistry to that cholesterol, that fat-based molecule. And from there, the kidneys become the superstar. Many of you know that my dad was on dialysis for the last year of his life. His kidneys did not work well. And for about 10 years before his dialysis was necessary, he was a typical farmer. He didn't have, we didn't understand what was whittling away at his kidneys was a proteinopathy, a pathology of his body producing a protein, which I believe we never were able to prove, but what we believe was some sort of autoimmune process. But what I did know, and again, as his daughter, I tried fixing this in many ways. I did know that we could not get his vitamin D out of the teens. And I'm saying teens, like 13, 14, 15, 19. I think one time we hit 21, but this was an insane amount of vitamin D3 that we were giving him just to get out of the teens. So as you look at the process of what happens to these chemicals, these fat-based chemicals, once they leave the liver, they head over to the kidney. The kidney does their job of processing vitamin D, and some of it becomes water soluble, which will result in exiting out the body in the urine. So even though you take in a bunch of vitamin D, if your body's efficiency is kind of what I like to say wrinkled at the kidneys, it doesn't do what you want it to do, which is turn it into the blood supply, which turns into 125 dihydroxy vitamin D. And this active component is a powerful part of the active process in the body. It is, however, not what we measure in your blood. All right, so as you look at, let's see, these are, I got to read it inside out on this. As you look at the sources for vitamin D, there are several places where getting vitamin D is not difficult. Number one, the sun. And there are several little apps out there, like I think there's one called D timer or D. I should have looked at it closer. Where it says in the area that you're in, where what is the best time of day for you to be exposing your skin to the sun to get the vitamin D conversion. And I'll tell you, here in the northern latitude of United States, oh, there's a reason all of us have low vitamin D. But other places, you'll see on the ketogenic diet, especially if you've taken consistently keto, the online course, I really push people to do two things. I push them to try sardines, like actually take a bite of them, not just wrinkle your nose and say, I'm not doing that, but truly try sardines, a little bitty fish, especially ones that don't go bad. Again, we don't live anywhere near an ocean. They are easy to eat and they taste like tuna. They really are good for you. And those sources of vitamin D are probably the best. Not only are they easiest to absorb, but there are all kinds of algorithms out there. And my good friend, Dr. Bill Harris, who's part of my local medical community, has spent years researching how important it is that vitamin D be processed, and then when it's put into supplements, how important it is that it doesn't go rancid, that it really does get absorbed. And if you want to skip all that science, because I have spent time reading those articles, I've even spent time interviewing Dr. Bill Harris, and I come away with, you should just eat little fish. It's the easiest answer. It's the most sustainable. It's pretty cost effective. The cost of sardines are pretty small, but it's because of the unbelievable ability for your body to absorb the vitamin D out of those little fish that I say the two foods that most people that join the ketogenic diet have never tried are sardines and liver. We won't talk about liver today. All right, so other foods that can be fortified. Of course, you're not going to see me recommend most of those because they are filled with carbohydrates usually. And when you put all those carbohydrates in, your insulin spikes up. That causes an increase in edema or swelling at the level of absorption. And that's why you can say, but doc, it's good for me. Orange juice has this in it. My cereal has this in it. It's fortified with fat. But even when my dad was keto, his ability to absorb a fat-based vitamin, hormone is what I wanted to call it there, which is probably more correct, was incredibly inefficient. It was incredibly inefficient. So as I look at the causes of vitamin D, again, that 35 degrees, the polar sides of the globe, 35 degrees and outward, if you would, or are the ones who really struggle with the enough sunlight to keep their vitamin D levels. Yes, time of day, 10 to 2. And then as you age, it does get more difficult for you to synthesize that cholesterol. And then finally, the pigmentation in your skin is another very important part that limits our ability to take vitamin D and turn it from D2, which is not active, to D3. All right, so here's our globe, our beautiful globe. And if you look what I'm about to do, you can kind of find where you live here. Keep an eye on it. And then notice that as I just take this part, I'm going to highlight the part that goes across the screen. That is the section that is the highest and the most likely to not have to supplement with vitamin D. However, even if you're supplemented with vitamin D and you're overweight, much of their vitamin D ends up in their fat storages. That again is that naughty, excessive Mr. Insulin. Here's just a shadow laying over those areas so you can try and take a better look at where you're at. And I don't know if you can see South Dakota on there, but I can. And it is not even close to that little red shadow. We are completely out of this zone. We are way north in that continent of we're not quite tundra, but I relate with the Canadians here for getting their vitamin D elevated. All right, so when I look at some of the things that I wanted to better understand, I was struggling. So I was struggling with grieving, honestly. And I'll pull this away just enough to kind of talk right to the camera to say, yeah, this was a difficult time. My mother died on October 25th and broke my heart. And I reeled from being in a healthy zone, from her being the healthiest she had been since the age of 30. And she died. And I didn't mean to get emotional again, but it broke my heart. And as I tried to heal thyself, I couldn't figure out why my brain just wouldn't do what I wanted it to do. I couldn't figure out why I couldn't fast for more than 36 hours. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't go to the gym. I couldn't find my energy. And as I'm pretty healthy. I really am. And I didn't want to go into my doctor. I actually kind of knew that this was grieving and it was going to take 6 months and it was going to hurt and it was going to be a long time. A long 6 months. I mean, sometimes 6 months goes by like that. And then other times it just, every day seems like a year. And as I looked at how can I help myself? When I couldn't, as many of you know, I was supposed to finish writing that book in June. July was when it was supposed to be published. And with the illness, the death of my dad, and then the illness for my mother, and then her funeral. Thank God for Michelle, who agreed to do American Tradition, which was this little place I could focus my energy while finishing writing the book. But I knew as I was explaining to Michelle several things that are going to block your ability to feel good. You know, one of them was sleep apnea, but this other one was vitamin D. And as I'm telling her about it, I just know that I should be checking my vitamin D. I hadn't checked it in probably 10 years. Maybe not quite that long, but at least 5. And I didn't want to go to the doctor. I didn't want to tell them about what was going on. I just didn't want the help. I wanted to check my own vitamin D. And it was about this time that Omega Quant, my good friend, Dr. Bill Harris, his company has been studying lipids and how to test them without getting lost in the process of medical, they're FDA approved, but I mean, to only be ordered, to leave out the provider. How can you offer a test to somebody without having to have a provider in the middle? And I really don't think many people think that way. There was a great company here in our local medical society for a couple of years that was allowed you to go in and order your own lab tests. It's a brilliant idea. Like, please use me, your physician, for things that are useful and valuable. And if you're taking thyroid medicine and you've been taking it for years and you just need a refill, well, let's check the number and get your blood work to tell us if you're on the right dose. You don't really need me. That's not exciting. That's not difficult. Much like keto in many ways, it's not difficult to learn it. I think it's difficult to sustain it. But vitamin D was another one of those things. Like, if you come into me and you order vitamin D, and I didn't have any of the diagnostic criteria, I was grieving. If anybody would have gone to their doctor and said, would you please order my vitamin D? I think it's low. I would have been in agreement to say, my insurance isn't going to cover this, and therefore I'll have to pay for it out of pocket, which would probably cost me around $100. That doesn't include the doctor's visit. That just includes the lab. And then the interpretation of the lab is something else you get billed for. And I'm like, okay, how can I check my vitamin D on my own? And as God and luck would have it, this is when the vitamin D lab availability came from Omega Quant. They also have done the cholesterol checking for omega-3 and omega-6s, and they use that technology to check vitamin D in the serum. And they had been testing it for a couple of years, and it finally came out in, I think, December of 2020. And anyway, so I ordered it on myself, and I pricked my finger and sent it in, and I think I did it live on the show one night. It's much more of a prick. Oh, this isn't what I thought. Oh, this is just the other thing that vitamin D does, saying, what does it do to your immune system? And it does affect how your body senses what's going on, especially on the infection front. If you look at some of the inflammatory responses when vitamin D is at a therapeutic level, and I would say above 50 is a therapeutic level, that we see a much less volatility in that cytokine storm. We see viruses cleared more quickly. See if I can get this back in the screen for you again. The final one is that, yeah, IL-6, which is another marker of an immune system, interleukin-6, is much better, much lower of, as the vitamin D was higher, the response from interleukin-6, meaning it would peak when it needs to, and then it goes back down to that, the baseline that it should be at, not staying at that kind of pseudo-elevated level, which we find in lots of chronically inflamed patients that did not fare very well when contracting COVID. It also helps in processing zinc as well as magnesium. I'm a big magnesium. I think I talked plenty about that. So here's what I did. I pricked my finger and I ordered my own vitamin D. And about 7 days later, I got this result. Now my vitamin D was down to 39. I'm like, well then. And of course, if you look at the level, they say, yeah, you're out of the 30 range. But I will tell you from the literature that I've read, and especially for brain health, when that vitamin D is under 50, it makes it difficult to repair from a time of grieving or a time of sadness. It makes it difficult to reverse depression. It makes it difficult to repair from a stroke. Brain health is very much connected to the nourishment that you're getting to the brain. And as I look at it, I was actually really irritated because, I sell this. I have access to this. And of course, when I find mine low, I order it on my husband and my children and my sister, and they're all quite compliant at taking this vitamin, which I probably take 2 of them 3 to 4 times a week on a good week. And then I wasn't very compliant. I just didn't do it. My husband takes it like clockwork. He is very methodical. He is the opposite of me. And he doesn't need to be reminded, and he doesn't need to revisit what the literature says about it. He just does it. My sister is also very compliant. Her number came back at like 100. My husband's number came back at like 85 or 90. I mean, it was very good. And I'm struggling, and mine comes back. And of course, I still get that this was grieving, but it also became very important to me to say, all right. So I did something that I honestly was taking vitamin D probably about 3 times a week. So I said, I'm not going to change that at all. I'm going to do one thing, and I'm going to recheck this in 4 weeks. And that one thing was, I can barely say it out loud. I got into a tanning bed. So I went to the tanning bed, and actually the guy who runs the local tanning booths around here had been to the keto support group at one point, and he's quite an innovative guy and fun to talk to. And I'm interviewing the lady at the front desk, and I'm asking her all these science questions about, I want the bed with the most UVB bulbs in it. And she goes on to tell me that they all have UVB bulbs in it, but some of them have red light and some of them have a fan. And I'm like, fan? You're going to be like, I'm going to be in there like 4 minutes. What do you need a fan for? But some people don't go in for 4 minutes, and some of them you stand up and some of them you lay down. And okay, I said, no. I want to keep this as simple as possible. I don't want any redness. I don't want any red light. I don't want any red rays. I only want to add UVB. I want to do one thing differently. And so she sells me this package that I can have unlimited minutes in this UVB for, I don't know, I think it was like $20 a month. And so I committed to doing, I think my first session was maybe 3 minutes or maybe it was 4 minutes. I think it was 4 minutes. So 4 minutes in this tanning bed, and I was going to go twice a week for 4 weeks. And I think it was on the 4th week that I finally just put them all in one. So the first time, there's parts of my skin that had never seen sun since, like, I don't know, I was in a tanning bed at the age of 16 or something. So I was really careful because I did not want to burn. And 4 minutes was plenty. And it was very interesting to see that when my melanin activated, which means the reason you get tan in a tanning bed is your melanin is moving. It's going to move and shield your nucleus in the cells. And as that, um, the process of improving that activation of this hormone in your body comes with the sunlight, and of course you'll get tan. I mean, that's what's going on. But it probably took me until the third week before I could notice any difference in the tan level of my skin. And again, this is 8 minutes a week, 4 minutes twice a week, and I did it for 4 weeks. And then I pricked my own finger. And I want to just be really mindful here. The pricking of my finger the second time, had I gone back into my doctor and said, I'm doing an experiment, I need you to test me again, they would have said, no, your insurance won't cover it, and you can't change it that quickly. And the reason I know they would tell me that is I've told patients that. So 4 weeks later, I prick my finger and I send it back into the lab. And the only thing I did was that little sun moved there to remind me to explain that the only thing I did was to keep taking my vitamins in my non-compliant 3 times a week that I was doing and add 8 minutes of UVB rays a week. And sure enough, what happens next is 4 weeks later, I increased my vitamin D to 59, like almost 60, 59. Oh, it's actually right at 59. So we went from 39 to 59 in 4 weeks with a few minutes of UVB rays. And again, when you live in these northern hemispheres, that's a big deal. So in the past, I've done some lectures on vitamin D, but I wanted to unpack this specific explanation, and you'll see this out on YouTube. It's a great, or throughout the medical literature, it's a great explanation to kind of give you a sense of what are the things we've studied in that have a correlation. And again, correlation is not causation, but a correlation with decreased cancers in the human body, as well as heart disease, diabetes, multiple sclerosis, a really big deal here in the Midwest. Again, we know that's a mitochondrial disease. We know there's a huge link to vitamin D. But let me unpack this with you to show you how this study, if you've seen this chart before, maybe give me a thumbs up, because it's fun to see. This is what this chart is trying to show you. So that scroll across the top is looking at the US measurements and the measurements in the UK. Again, the United States is weird. We have a weird metric system, so it doesn't always match the rest of the world. We're nanograms per milliliter, and you're nanomoles per milliliter. Maybe it's deciliter. I can't see that. Sorry, it's written in white. All right, but you can see that those numbers, and you can find what I'm going to do here is circle. That's where I started. That's what happened when I was really struggling to get my brain to do what I wanted it to do. And 4 weeks later, that's where I had progressed to. So knowing that, as I look at this chart, I'm going to, oopsie, I didn't mean to do that twice. One more time here. Okay, this is the chart I wanted to look at. I hope you can see this. I hope I can get this close enough to you without falling off. Watch me fall. Okay, that's not going to work. Sorry. You're just going to have to scroll in. Okay, so if you can look at that yellow line, the yellow line, that yellow bar is what happens, what is the risk for cancer, for these different cancers. And the ones along the side there, the top line was all cancers. Second one was breast cancer. Third one was ovarian, colon, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Then it went on to diabetes, fractures, falls, multiple sclerosis. Heart attack was only measured in men. And then there was kidney disease, endometrial cancer, and rickets, which is where the FDA came up with the minimum effective dose, or the minimum blood level needed, which was to prevent rickets. That's where that came from. So the top number is to look at if I had a blood level of 25, which I had a blood level of 39. So it's not going to be exact numbers, but if I took that blood level from 39 and I raised it up to 11, if I took my blood level of American blood level from 25, again, my dad's was in the teens. I couldn't get it above 22, despite 10,000 international units of vitamin D every week for like 9 months. We didn't get it to go up into, we never got to 25. But if you look at 25, nobody would deny that is a deficiency of vitamin D. And if you look at the the reduction in cancer from going from 25 to 39, which is where I was before I went suntanning, I had a 38% reduction in all cancers by improving my vitamin D. Looking at what my body's health response is and my immune system as well as my repair system. Your body is always getting cancer. It should be winning. And if you have a deficiency in vitamin D, there's a correlation to other health problems that really do increase that risk of cancer. The next one is breast cancer. That if my number was 25 and I got my number to 32, I don't know if you can see it. So here's 25. If I got my number to 32, I would reduce my risk of breast cancer by 30%. Now, that's pretty good. But by increasing my vitamin D into that 59, 60 range, the best study, again, I just put the studies on here, and I didn't do it. This is the chart that was put together. I didn't cite the person. I think it begins with a G. I think somebody on here already said it. 83% reduction in breast cancer by getting my vitamin D just to a level of 52. I was up to 59, and knowing that it is a season that I'm about to enter in where breast cancer and breast cancer prevention becomes very important. But who talks about the need for vitamin D to be this high in a way to prevent the recurrence of breast cancer, as well as letting breast cancer have its reign over your body? Let's go to the next one. The next one's ovarian cancer. And again, if I took it from 25 to 38, I reduced my ovarian cancer by 12%. But I got it down to I had a 17% reduction if I got it to 48. I got it all the way up to 60. Now, these numbers of reduction are based on starting at 25. So I only started at 39 and took it to 69. So my reductions aren't quite as dramatic as what are in this chart. But I think it is a powerful teaching tool to say, I've seen this chart several times. I've tried to explain it. And when I saw my own numbers, I pulled out that chart to say, oh my gosh, look at, even if you take 20% of this improvement or reduction in cancer that I have done by improving my vitamin D level, man, I'll take it. I'll totally take it. Again, one of my favorites is 66% reduction by getting your vitamin D above 54. You get a 66% reduction in type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes, for the autoimmune process of attacking your islet cells in your pancreas. Again, that would be starting at 25, and I started at 39. So that's not a perfect correlation, but it is the impact that I want is to show you how powerful the prevention process is for our bodies, for the system that looks at vitamin D, but also looks at what happens when your body is looking at the process to improve vitamin D, and the number of hours I've spent talking, writing prescriptions, trying to get their gut to absorb the vitamin D, trying to get the kidney of my father to do the right thing with vitamin D instead of pee it out, which I think is what he was doing, and not get stuck in the process. What I also think is really important is the next slide. And that is, when you watch people who are in the process of losing weight, and they write in, I've had a couple people say, I am definitely struggling with the ketogenic diet. I can't seem to get that body mass index to where where it's in that green zone for the BMI, and they look at the vitamin D. They'll write in and say, I can't seem to get my vitamin D up. Often their vitamin D or their numbers aren't in the yellow zone, which would put them overweight. The ones that are writing in usually are in the obese category. They've been overweight for years. They've really tried to increase that vitamin D. I can think of 3 breast cancer patients right off the top of my head where I have probably spent hours trying to get their vitamin D elevated before I said, we are going to hack this. We are going to do this differently. And that process was that they were overweight. They had a high insulin state. This was before I was using the ketogenic diet. And I was doing everything knowing that their breast cancer, I wasn't their oncologist. I was the doctor who was going to help the oncologist. And if I would have looked inside their fat cells, had I don't know, biopsied their fat cells and said, where could I improve the process? I could have tried to empty out their fat cells because in many ways, the amount of vitamin D I was putting in these overweight women trying to prevent their breast cancer, help the profile of their breast cancer prevention, it was in their fat cells. The drug gets sequestered into its storage bin. And when you have a lot of fat storage, that fatty hormone or fat vitamin called vitamin D gets stuck in their fat cells. And it cannot get out until their insulin is down, until they drop their Dr. Boz ratio at least under 100. And let's hope they get their Dr. Boz ratio under 40 a couple times a week and better as they go on. But as long as that insulin is high, their sugars will be high and their ketones will be low. Kind of like mine were my sugar wasn't so high at the beginning of the show, but my ketones are terrible. And I will tell you, it's totally my fault. It's totally my fault. But as I study people with an overweight problem, and they're struggling with vitamin D, and we're trying to improve their immune system, or they're trying to prevent that cancer, man, it's a pickle. It's quite a pickle. I think this one is just the last thing to say. Twice as likely to test positive for COVID-D. This is another one of the studies over the last year. That viral clearance is highly linked to those vitamin D levels that are above 50. And then it reduces that inflammation, that production of the cytokine storm that we talked about. That's that interleukin 6. Oh, this is the same slide we did earlier. All right, before I do this, I'm going to do a couple just quick announcements and make sure I follow up with any questions. Let's see if I can get this to be not crooked. Oh, there we go. Maybe. All right, so as we are getting to there, I do want to say a couple things. So many of you have, for those of you that did take my brains course, I am super excited about what happened that first week. I, again, have been keeping, that song that you learn in Sunday school about keeping your flame under a bushel basket. That's how I felt about that brains course for a year. I kept saying, I can't launch it yet. I can't launch it yet. I can't launch it yet. And I really do think that the launching of the course was just something, I don't know why I do know why. There was plenty of explanations, but the first class has been awesome. I really am thankful for those of you that did join and those of you that are watching in groups out there. The course is closed, so I'm going to use this feedback on the first class to see what things I should do to enhance it. And I'm tingly when I think about what's going to happen with this education that has been put into a package that can go out to other people, especially those that struggle. So I just want to say thanks again to all those folks that are in the class, and we'll see you again on Wednesday. I'll be sending out that email to you tomorrow. Other things that I do really appreciate, and that is if you need vitamin K2, D3, this is one of those that I do this the best I can, and that is on my website. If you order 3 of these, you'll get them for whatever the price is. I can't remember off the top of my head. But if you order 4 of them, I throw in the 4th one for free. So 4 bottles gets you a 25% discount. You also get a 25% discount when you order 4 bottles of the C8C10 capsules or the BHB capsules. I really do want you making the most of the supplements that I put my heart behind, and especially the ones that I've put on discount. This is one of my favorites that I put on discount because it isn't about forever being in a tanning bed. This is still a very important part of what happens. Like I said, my husband and my sister who live in this environment, They were fine. They were fine. But I do think it's a powerful teaching tool to show you how quickly you can change a vitamin D. And what I hope you saw in here is it's more than just a vitamin level, like, yeah, I should take that vitamin. I live in the Northern Hemisphere. I live in the dark zones, and I am very, very aware of how much that parlays into my patients. The support you give the channel by sharing these videos, by watching on Sunday nights, and by buying products on bozmd.com are very helpful. The other important part that I want you to, I was going to take time for, but I don't think, I'm just looking at the time, probably don't have time for that, is if you go to bozmd.com and you look at Dr. Boz favorites, on there, if you scroll, you can find this vitamin D test that I ordered on myself, that I ordered on my husband and my sister and my sons. Said, I know it hurts. I need to prick your finger. The process of improving, somebody says the sun isn't near you. I'm like, of course the sun is near me, but we're South Dakotans. And if you go out without sleeves or pants on in the wintertime, we might have you evaluated for your mental health because it's very cold. We hit 50 below about 6 weeks ago. It's real. That sounds like it's a made up number, but it's real. Scroll back on my Instagram, you'll see it. The point is no, nobody goes outside. And even in the summertime, I'm known for wearing long sleeves and covering up from the sun, of course. So the sun exposure, when I go out, it's not between 10 and 2. I'm seeing patients then. So looking at the sun, who is, of course, the sun's in my area, but it's not in a place where I can take advantage of it. And when I can schedule my 8 minutes, it turned out to be much better than I wasn't expecting it to raise that much. I thought 4 weeks of it wouldn't have changed it, maybe a few points, but I did not expect it to be above 50 by the time I'd spent 9 months just packing it into my dad, trying to get his numbers up. Anyway, so I am asking for your support of, if you do want vitamin D, please use the supplements on bozmd.com. It does support this channel, and I do enjoy bringing this information to you. In part, that's because of the patrons that buy products from my page, and I hope that you learn how to use them on this page. I hope that your questions get answered to the best of my ability. And I really hope that if you live in Florida, you find a way, or anywhere near Tampa, and that I get to join you there and find a different way to do medicine that I think will be powerful, and not just for the super wealthy, and not exhausting to the physicians. So thank you again for those that supported. I want to, I'm going to check my numbers, and then I'm going to give away these books. So if you remember those websites, you should probably go there now because they are, how that works is you type in this little key, if you haven't seen this before, and the key gives the audiobook away for free. And even if you don't have an Audible account, it still gets you that audiobook for free. And I've had several people who got it. I've never done that. I just give it away. Oh, there's one more thing. If you're following me on Instagram tomorrow, there is going to be a book giveaway that is not my book. And I will, I'm not going to do mine tomorrow, but mine is being given away by Dr. Judy Cho. So if you follow her on Instagram, I guess that's how you'd have to do it. You have to follow her on Instagram. And then I do have, I don't want to lick that, but I thought I had alcohol. Oh, here's alcohol salt. I'm just going to, sometimes I have BHB on my finger from when I stirred it. So I just want to make sure that's not there. All right, let's do this. It's going to be a little stingy because that alcohol is still there, but it wasn't a very big poke. Might not work. All right, it's coming. Okay, so here's ketones. Those are counting down. And here's a glucose 1. Okay, oh, look at that. Okay, so the reason I do this, so ketones 2.5, glucose 101. Stress does that. But I do think it's a powerful teaching point to say, yes, when I use these ketones, I don't do it just because I think it's fun to poke my finger. No, I don't like it any more than you do. I also hold my breath every time to say, checking your numbers live on this YouTube channel is my way to say, I trust what it is I put my name on. And when you should be able to do this with any of the ketones you swallow. If you take the ketones and you cannot see them go up on your meter, it's not a good quality ketone. Yes. All right. So that's the numbers. And I am going to write down in my journal what I'm going to pray about this week. I'm going to do my best to get to 72 hours. If you're looking for somebody to do a fast with me, you're welcome to join me. All right, here we go. Let's do it. And let's see. Okay, so for those of you that are looking for the audiobook any way you can, again, can I say it's my favorite? I don't know. It's hard. It's like picking between children. So here goes. The key is YW8T3TT3KF4XD. So I'll leave that there for just a minute. When do you take the ketones? Somebody asks. Ketones for me, when I use them when I struggle. I've been to seasons where my insulin resistant just I couldn't get my numbers to look very good. What I know now, that was actually pretty early in my journey. What I know now is that I needed to follow what it is I do in consistently keto, or the keto continuum, and that is I needed to narrow my eating window. I had to give up the evening hours of eating. And with my family, that was something that I could do for a couple nights, and then something would get in the way. So I was struggling, and I had not fasted. I was like afraid of fasting. And when I found Soleil water, and again, those salt rocks are on that Dr. Boz favorites. When I found Soleil water was when I first started to have really good success with my fasting. But before that, I used to tell patients that having broth during your fasting is okay. As I pulled away from that, I still allow them to do that. That's, again, good, better, best. Best is salt and water, black coffee. But in the good, I still keep, I let some people have cream in their coffee, and I let some people have the broth. But that's the better version is to have BHB. And again, that is not with MCT in it. The MCT mixture, that's this one, and it is my favorite. I mean, I really love this, where you put ketones and BHB into one powder. And if you go on to Amazon.com, you'll see a little video there that just shows you the science that it's short-acting ketones with those longer-acting ketones. And the problem with what happens when I have people take MCT during their fasts is they do not usually have any weight loss. So again, you're not fasting for weight loss, but you are fasting to stimulate your metabolism, especially that mitochondrial health. And so I don't do MCT or any kind of oil, and I don't do any fat of any sort. I know cream is something I used to do when I first started fasting. I do not do that anymore. I let people journey through their own journey to get rid of the cream or the fatty coffees in the morning. And this is all in the book, but it is helpful, and it's explained better in the book too. Okay, here we go. The next one is consistently keto. And now the first code is going to be what we call the world market. I know it says UK there, but really it's the world market. So anybody outside the United States that wants an audiobook, this is your code, and we'll play it now. If you're inside the United States, don't do this one because it's not fair. 9T8 ANSL44 8LQH. That is the one in the world market. I saw somebody just type on there that I think I saw that. Let's see if I can make that come up again. So somebody says, since I've been following Dr. Boz, I have consistently been in ketosis. Oopsie, it went away again. But her ketones were a couple of numbers. I would have you read this book, because if you've only been following me for 3 weeks and you're actually doing blood numbers, I wouldn't recommend that. They're kind of expensive to check these numbers. And although it's curious and it's fun, I would have you focused on something much different the first few weeks and save your money. All right, US people, 983LDE89P7LZ7. So those are the free books. And if you get with high cholesterol, is D3 okay to take? Yes, it's okay to take. Oh, I just wanted to see that. I don't know how to get the comments to stay up there. Let's try that again. Let's see. So, God bless me from Denmark. I really like the people from Denmark. Yeah, no weight loss for me is good loss too much. Up to 125 now from 122, 5'7". Doing it for autophagy and immunity. All right, so I'll answer that question, then I'll call it a night. So autophagy is something I have a lot of people that do write in about, and indeed, it's a big part of why I do this. I would encourage you. In fact, the people taking the brain course, one of their assignments is to go back to the YouTube lecture I have from, I think it's 2012. It might be 2013, but it's almost a decade ago. And I tell them so many of them comment on how it looks like I'm older in that 2012, 2013 video than I am in 2021. And I tell them that's what autophagy is. And autophagy is a very important part of this. Like my mom's ability to heal from that cancer, which she had had for a decade. And I had given her every medical, by the book, we had followed every rule. But she wasn't better. She was getting worse. And the reason she died healthy, the healthiest she's been in 30 years, was from autophagy. So autophagy is a huge part of this story. I wouldn't whimsically be doing that. If you're looking for autophagy, I would totally read the book or listen to those books. I do a much better job of explaining that. I think I might even do a better job in any way you can than the second one. I don't know. Maybe it's an important topic. It is measurable, is what I'm trying to get at. I still think the best information about fasting and autophagy is the final lecture in Consistently Keto. It takes me an hour to explain it. I use these awesome slides. It's my favorite video of all times. If I have a colleague that really wants to understand a couple things, I tell them, you're not going to find this anywhere on YouTube. You got to go into the course and you got to get all the way to the last video. And the other videos inside Consistently Keto are 15 minutes, 7 minutes. They're short little lessons to get you through, right? But the last one is an hour. And it's my favorite. I love it. It's amazing. I still go back to that lecture and say, here's what I haven't said out loud for weeks. All right, so autophagy, hopefully that answered your question. And I want to say thank you for everybody coming tonight. We'll see you next week. And pray for my son. If you're joining me fasting, I'll see you on Instagram. And I'm Dr. Boz, improving your health one ketone at a time. Good night, guys.